I want to tell you about a person named Dorothy. She was 72 years old, a retired schoolteacher from a small town in Ohio. She had carried the same extra weight, 22 pounds, for the better part of 15 years. She had tried, quietly and persistently, to do what everyone told her to do. She ate less. She walked every morning. She cut out the things she loved most: the bread, the evening glass of wine, the occasional piece of chocolate after dinner. And still, the weight stayed. Her doctor, kind as he was, told her the same thing he had told her for years. "Dorothy, you're 72. This is just what happens." She accepted that for a while. But 14 months later, without starting a new diet, without running a single mile, without a prescription or a surgery or a dramatic transformation, Dorothy had lost all 22 pounds. Her blood pressure had come down. Her energy had returned in a way she hadn't felt in a decade. And when her doctor reviewed her blood work, he sat quietly for a moment and said, "I honestly don't fully understand what happened here." The researchers who later studied Dorothy's case understood it a great deal better. And what they found is the reason I'm speaking with you today. Because Dorothy's story is not a miracle. It is not an anomaly. It is biology, finally understood. And if you are over 50 and have been told that your body has simply changed for good, I want you to stay with me, because what I'm about to share changes everything. For decades, the message given to people over 50 has been remarkably consistent. Your metabolism slows down. Your hormones shift. The weight comes on. Accept it. And on the surface, parts of that message are true. The body does change after 50, after 60, after 70. No one should pretend otherwise. But there is a profound difference between change and permanent damage, and that difference is exactly what modern longevity science is beginning to illuminate. Here is what we have been getting wrong. We have been treating metabolism as though it were a fixed engine, one that simply runs slower as the years pass, like a clock winding down. But metabolism is not a clock. It is a living, responsive, remarkably adaptable system. And what the research now shows us, what the data from the last 5 to 7 years is making increasingly clear, is that many of the metabolic changes people experience after midlife are not permanent fixtures of aging. They are responses. Responses to hormonal shifts, to changes in the gut, to low-level inflammation, to the slow breakdown of cellular energy systems. And, this is the part that matters most, responses that can, to a significant degree, be redirected. Dorothy's body did not defy the rules of aging. It followed them all the way to a place most people never reach because they stop believing it's possible. I have spent years studying cases like hers, and the pattern, once you understand it, is unmistakable. Your metabolism didn't die. It changed, and change, unlike death, is something we can work with. To understand what happened inside Dorothy, I need to take you somewhere most people have never been invited. Inside a single cell. Specifically, I want to introduce you to a structure called the mitochondrion. You may remember it from a science class long ago, the so-called powerhouse of the cell. But that textbook description does it almost no justice, because what mitochondria actually do is extraordinary. They are the energy converters of the human body. They take the food you eat, the oxygen you breathe, and they transform it into the fuel your cells use to function. Every heartbeat, every thought, every step you take It is mitochondria making that possible. Now, here is what changes as we age. Beginning around midlife and accelerating through our 60s and 70s, mitochondrial efficiency gradually declines. The tiny engines that once ran cleanly and powerfully begin to produce less energy and more waste. The cellular fuel your body used to burn readily begins to back up. And when the body is not burning fuel effectively at the cellular level, it does what any overwhelmed system does. It stores what it cannot process as fat. This is not a metaphor. This is cellular biology. And it is one of the central reasons that weight accumulates in the years after 50. Not because you are eating too much, but because your cells are struggling to convert what you consume into usable energy. Dorothy's cells were in exactly this state when her case first came to my attention. And the question that drove her recovery, and the research that followed, was a beautifully simple one. What if we could restart those engines? There is a conversation that happens in millions of doctors' offices every year. A person in their early 50s, sometimes late 40s, sits across from a physician and describes weight they cannot explain, fatigue they cannot shake, a body that seems to be working against them for the first time in their life. And the answer they receive, more often than not, is a reference to aging hormones and a gentle suggestion to eat less and move more. What that answer misses is the cascade. Because when the key hormones of midlife decline, estrogen in those who have gone through menopause, testosterone in men as they age past 50, they do not simply remove a single chemical from the picture. They rewrite the instructions the body uses to manage fat, sugar, and energy simultaneously. Here is what that cascade looks like. These hormones have receptors in fat tissue, in the liver, in the gut lining, and in the brain. When their levels fall, fat begins to redistribute, moving away from the limbs and settling, more stubbornly, in the abdomen. The liver becomes less efficient at processing dietary fat. Insulin sensitivity drops, meaning the same meal that once moved through the body cleanly now triggers a larger blood sugar response. And running quietly beneath all of this, like a slow current, is rising inflammation. Each of these changes is real. Each is documented. Each makes weight management genuinely harder for both men and women past midlife. But here is what Dorothy's case helped make clear. None of these changes, not a single one, operates in isolation from the others. They are connected. They move together. And that means they can be addressed together. I want to introduce you to something you carry with you every moment of your life. Something that influences your weight, your hunger, your energy, and your mood, and that most people over 50 have never been told about. Your gut microbiome. Deep inside your digestive tract, there are trillions of microorganisms, bacteria primarily, that together form an ecosystem as complex and as individual as a fingerprint. And what the science of the last decade has revealed is that this ecosystem is not simply a digestive tool. It is a metabolic command center. These microorganisms produce chemical signals. One of the most important is a hormone called GLP-1. You may have heard that name recently in connection with certain weight loss medications. But here is what most people don't know. GLP-1 is not a drug. It is something your own gut has always produced naturally. It regulates appetite. It steadies blood sugar. It communicates with the brain to signal fullness. It supports fat burning. And in people with a thriving gut microbiome, it flows in healthy abundance. The problem is this. As we age, and especially after the hormonal shifts of midlife disrupt the gut's own ecology, the microbiome loses diversity. The microbial communities that produce GLP-1 and other vital metabolic signals weaken. The body's own natural appetite and fat regulation system begins to falter, not because the mechanism is broken, but because the environment that sustains it has been quietly depleted. This depletion affects men and women alike. It is one of the most universal and least discussed drivers of weight gain after 50. Dorothy's gut had undergone exactly this kind of depletion, and restoring it, not with a medication but with food and rhythm, became one of the most powerful shifts of her entire recovery. I want to pause here for a moment, because what I'm about to describe may finally explain something you have quietly wondered about for years. Why did the diet stop working? Not just the last diet, all of them. The ones you followed faithfully, the ones you tracked meticulously, the ones that worked briefly and then simply stopped, as though your body had read the instructions and decided to ignore them. You were not failing the diet. The diet was failing to account for something happening deep inside your cells, a process called chronic low-grade inflammation. This is not the inflammation you feel when you twist an ankle or catch a cold. This is quieter. It has no sharp pain, no obvious signal. It is a slow, persistent biological fire, and in people over 50, it is extraordinarily common. It works like this. As fat accumulates, particularly visceral fat, the kind that settles around the organs in the abdomen, that fat tissue becomes biologically active. It releases inflammatory signals that circulate through the body. Those signals interfere with insulin. They disrupt metabolism. They communicate to fat cells, in effect, to hold on, to resist. Compounding this are what scientists call senescent cells, aging cells that have stopped dividing but refuse to die. They linger in tissue, releasing a continuous stream of inflammatory molecules. Research now identifies these cells as significant contributors to the metabolic slowdown that makes weight loss so frustratingly resistant as we get older, in both men and women. Here is the reassurance I want you to hold on to. This inflammatory environment is not permanent. It can change. Dorothy's did. This is the moment you have been waiting for. What did Dorothy actually do? I want to be honest with you. When I first reviewed her case and the changes she had made, my instinct, even as someone who studies these mechanisms, was to expect something dramatic, a rigorous protocol, an intensive intervention, something that required enormous discipline. What I found instead was 5 quiet shifts, none extreme, none punishing, each one precisely targeting one of the biological mechanisms we have been building together. The first was timing. Dorothy began eating within a consistent 10-hour window each day, not restricting what she ate, but aligning when she ate with her body's natural metabolic rhythms. The second was movement. Not intense cardio, but a gentle form of daily muscle activation, 15 to 20 minutes of resistance-based movement that she wove into the hours between late morning and early afternoon. The third shift was nutritional, not a diet, but 3 specific additions to her daily eating, foods that fed her gut microbiome, that restored the microbial communities her body needed to produce its own natural GLP-1. The fourth was sleep. Dorothy addressed what she had quietly accepted as normal: poor, fragmented sleep. That was in fact a significant driver of both inflammation and metabolic disruption. And the fifth was removal, not of calories, but of one specific category of dietary input that research consistently links to gut microbiome damage and inflammatory signaling. Each shift on its own would have helped. Together, targeting mitochondria, hormonal balance, gut health, inflammation, and sleep simultaneously, they created something the science has a precise word for: reversal. Let me take you deeper into the first of Dorothy's 5 shifts, because it is the one that surprises people the most. She didn't change what she ate, she changed when. Inside your body, there is an internal clock, a circadian rhythm that governs nearly every biological function, including metabolism. This clock is ancient. It evolved over hundreds of thousands of years, calibrated to a world where humans ate during daylight hours and rested in darkness. In the modern world, that rhythm has been quietly disrupted. Most people over 50 eat across a window of 14 to 16 hours, from that first coffee in the early morning to the late evening snack. And while that pattern feels normal, it means the body is almost never in the metabolic state where it most efficiently burns fat. That state, which researchers call the fasted metabolic window, requires a pause from food long enough for insulin levels to settle, for cellular cleanup processes to activate, and for the body's own fat-burning mechanisms to engage. Dorothy's 10-hour eating window, finishing her last meal by early evening and not eating again until mid-morning, gave her body something it had not had in years: a reliable nightly period in which it could do exactly this. The results in the research are consistent. People in their 60s and 70s who align their eating with their circadian rhythm show measurable improvements in insulin sensitivity, visceral fat reduction, and metabolic rate without changing a single calorie. The body knows how to burn fat. It simply needs the space and the timing to do it. Here is a truth about metabolism that I wish every person over 50 were told the day they turned 50. Muscle is a metabolic organ, not just a structure that moves your body, not just something athletes need. Muscle tissue is the single largest site of glucose and fat metabolism in the human body. Every pound of it burns energy around the clock, while you sleep, while you sit, while you read these words. And after 50, we begin to lose it. This process, called sarcopenia, is gradual and painless, which is exactly what makes it so dangerous. Between the ages of 50 and 70, people can lose up to 30% of their muscle mass if nothing is done to counter it. And as that muscle disappears, so does the body's resting metabolic capacity. The furnace grows smaller. The same food that once burned cleanly begins to accumulate. This affects men and women equally. In fact, in men, the parallel decline of testosterone accelerates muscle loss in ways that compound the metabolic impact significantly. Dorothy's second shift was to change this. Not with a gym membership, not with weights she had no experience using. She began a simple daily practice: 20 minutes of gentle resistance-based movement, bodyweight exercises, resistance bands, slow, deliberate movements that asked her muscles to work against gravity. Within weeks, something changed. Not on the scale, not yet, but in her energy, in the ease of movement, in the way her body felt by afternoon. What was changing internally was the gradual restoration of metabolic tissue. Muscle was rebuilding. Mitochondria, responding to the new demand, were becoming more efficient. The furnace was being relit. Building even a small amount of muscle after 60 is not vanity. It is the most powerful metabolic investment any person can make. Dorothy's third shift brought her back to the kitchen, but not in the way you might expect. She did not start a new diet. She did not count macros or weigh portions. She made 3 additions to the way she already ate, and those 3 additions began to rebuild something her gut had been quietly losing for years. The first was prebiotic fiber, the specific type of plant-based fiber that feeds the beneficial bacteria in the gut. Foods like slightly underripe bananas, cooked and cooled potatoes, oats, garlic, and leeks. These are not exotic ingredients. They are simple, affordable, and profoundly effective at nourishing the microbial communities that produce GLP-1 and other vital metabolic signals. The second addition was fermented foods, a small daily serving of something like natural yogurt, kefir, or fermented vegetables. Research increasingly shows that regular fermented food consumption directly increases gut microbiome diversity, the very diversity that declines through the hormonal shifts of midlife in both men and women. The third addition was polyphenol-rich plants, the deeply colored fruits, vegetables, and herbs that carry powerful anti-inflammatory compounds. Berries, dark leafy greens, olive oil, turmeric. These foods work at the cellular level, quieting the inflammatory signals that had been locking Dorothy's fat in place. What Dorothy was not doing, and this is important, was removing things she loved. She was not restricting, she was restoring. Her gut microbiome, fed consistently with what it needed, began to recover its diversity. Its metabolic signaling improved. The body's own natural appetite regulation, the GLP-1 her gut had once produced in abundance, began to return. Not from a prescription, from her own biology, finally nourished. Several months after Dorothy's transformation had been documented, I asked her to do something unusual. I asked her to write a letter. Not to me, not to a researcher or a physician. To the person she had been at 55, the one who was just beginning to feel the weight of something she couldn't name. The one who was starting to accept that her body had made a decision without her. She wrote, "I wish I had known that tired wasn't permanent. I wish someone had told me that my body wasn't fighting me, it was waiting. Waiting for me to understand what it needed. I wasted years being angry at myself for something that was never my fault." I have read that letter many times, because Dorothy's story is not really about 22 pounds. It is about something far more important than a number on a scale. It is about what happens when a person stops accepting a story they were handed and replaces it with the truth of what biology actually shows us. The truth is this: your metabolism is not a relic. Your cells, even at 70, even at 75, retain a remarkable capacity to respond to the right conditions. The body is not finished with you. It is listening to what you eat, to when you rest, to how you move, to the environment you create inside it. Longevity science is not a distant promise. It is unfolding right now in laboratories and clinics around the world. And what it is finding, consistently, is that the body's capacity for renewal is far greater than we were ever told. Dorothy knew that. Now, so do you. And the most important thing you can do today
is refuse to stop believing it.